All right, let's move on to Us, written and directed in 2019 by the great Jordan Peele. A family's serene beach vacation turns to chaos when their doppelgangers appear and begin to terrorize them. This film was made on a $20 million budget and had a box office of $255 million. It's currently rated 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. This film stars Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, Elizabeth Moss, Tim Heidecker, and we get great childhood performances from Shahadi Wright-Joseph and Evan Alex.
This is a fantastic follow-up to Get Out. And it's hard to follow that movie up because it was so well received in such a fantastic horror film. But Jordan Peele knocked it out of the park with Us, which is a really original take on horror that has a lot of social commentary, just like Get Out. And I really like this movie. It's terrifying, it's thought-provoking, it's fun, and it's extremely unique and original.
Get Out is, in my opinion, a bona fide masterpiece. But this film is mind-blowing when you finally learn what's going on, and it's terrifying. And this film has kind of two incredible twists at the end of the movie.
And so we end up learning that these doppelgangers, they were created by the U.S. government as a means to control the people in the country. And it's hinted at by the daughter when she says to the family, did you know that the government put fluoride in the water so that they can control America? And so I think Jordan Peele is talking about this idea that maybe the general public don't really have control over themselves and how they think and how they react to things. They're kind of told how to react. They're kind of told what to think. And so I think that's a commentary he's had in this film where the people above ground are controlled to move, to think and act in a certain way. But then we learn that this whole experiment ended up being abandoned by the government, and that's why the tethered are no longer a part of the experiment.
Yeah, it's a huge idea in terms of scope, and the main difference between the tethered below ground and the other people above ground, I think that Jordan's trying to talk about is the way people are brought up in their life and all over the world, where your life, a major factor of who you become, is dependent on your surroundings in a lot of ways. Obviously, your decisions and choices in life make who you are, but also how you grow up and where you grow up and what you were given in a young age or what you were given in your life or what you weren't given affects the future of your life and what you become. And the major difference between the tethered and the people above ground, besides how they were born and how they were grown up, is the people above ground seem to have a soul, whereas the tethered have no souls, because that's one of the reasons why I think that the government plan was abandoned, was because since they didn't share a soul, or since the tethered don't have a soul, they couldn't control completely the humans in America. So that's why the plan was abandoned. And the ironic thing about it is we eventually learn, big twist, heads up, spoiler alert, that Adelaide, played by Lupita, was actually one of the tethered. So she's really Red, and where Red is really Adelaide. And even though she has really no soul, you can say, she's able to blend in with society and able to have a family and have a life, which shows you that we all are human and we all are equal deep down in what we truly are.
Yeah, I think I can absolutely get behind what you're saying there. And I think another way to put it is that this film definitely explores the idea of classism, not just in America, but around the world, because I think that, and the idea of living with privilege and the idea of not having privilege, and the effect that if there are people in the world that live with privilege, then there are people in the world that suffer because of that privilege. And so, for example, in America, we have a collective privilege. You know, we have grocery stores, we have access to electricity, clean water, plumbing, comforts of homes, clothing. You can afford, but most of the things that you can enjoy in the comforts of life are very affordable in America. As a whole, compared to billions of other people around the world, a country like America, we live very comfortably. And a lot of people around the world suffer. You know, our clothes are cheaply made by people in factories. We buy shoes that people sew together. Electronics we buy are made in factories by people who are living on the poverty line, and they don't even know how to use an iPhone, but they're building an iPhone. And so our privilege comes at the expense, to a certain extent, the suffering of other people across the globe. And the thing is, I think what Jordan Peele's saying in this movie is that just because you live in America and enjoy the comforts of America doesn't make you a bad person, because you didn't choose where you were born. But I think it's important to not take the mindset that you deserve what you have. You know what I mean? Yes, life in America can be very easy and comforting as opposed to other nations, but you should respect that rather than think that you deserve things. You deserve every comfort. You deserve to always be happy and to always be taken care of, because that's dangerous and that creates a divide in the world. If you don't respect the suffering of other people, then you'll never respect the things you have in life and understand how lucky you are to have them.
Yeah, and this symbol of, or this metaphor of the disenfranchised or the privileged is also shown with the theme of the Hands Across America, which a long time ago, I think it was in the 80s or the early 90s, was this large campaign or protest to bring awareness and to raise funds for the homeless and the people who are disenfranchised in life. And it was actually ended up being very unsuccessful and almost turned into a joke eventually, because it didn't even raise half of the funds that it wanted to, despite all the marketing that it had. So it unfortunately didn't work out really. And it's shown throughout the film a lot, where these images of holding hands, and specifically towards the end of the film, when we're in the underground world, where Lupita's character, who we think is Red at the time, has on the chalkboard is people holding hands. She has the two figures holding hands. She cuts with the scissors. And that's because Red is really Adelaide. So she was switched when she was a
tethered,
kid.
yeah.
So she's a tethered person. Red, again, is really Adelaide. So she's not a tethered, whereas Adelaide is really the tethered person. And so Adelaide, in the beginning of the film, when she's a little girl walking around Santa Cruz, she sees that commercial of Hands Across America. And so that stuck with her for a long time. And she becomes basically a leader. And she's different because, she has a soul, you can say. She knows how to talk. She's been cultured. She's been living in comfort and privilege above the world. And she leads this movement of this new version of Hands Across America, you can say, where the untethered kind of basically plan a revolt or revolution to come up and kill all the normal people up there and take their places. And they do that Hands Across America act of holding hands across the world and across America.
Yeah, so the tethered want to take control of the soul by killing their counterparts. I have this quote from Jordan Peele, in which he explains what he thinks one of the themes of the movie is. I just want to say it real quick, and we can talk about it. And so Jordan Peele said this movie is about this country. We're in a time where we fear the other, whether it's the mysterious invader that we think is going to come and kill us and take our jobs, or the faction we don't live near who voted a different way than us. We're all about pointing the finger, and I wanted to suggest that maybe the monster we really need to look at has our face. Maybe the evil is us. And so what I think he's saying is that we live in a very polarizing time where we're constantly attacking other people and trying to destroy other people. And especially if someone doesn't agree with us, we view them as an enemy, someone who's evil. And so I think what Jordan Peele, as he said in that quote, is saying with this film is that maybe the evil doesn't lie in the other person, but it lies within us. And if we actually take the time to recognize that evil within ourselves, then that's the better way to make the world a better place and society a better place, to recognize the demon inside of you and the problems you have and any kind of evil nature you have within you, and trying to get rid of that rather than trying to take down anyone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the real fun part about this movie is the protagonist of the film is actually the villain of the movie at the same time, which again relates to our own perspective of our own lives, where are we a negative character in the world too? This episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by our friends at movieposters.com. Use coupon code Raiders15 for 15% off your order. Movieposters.com, they're the #1 site to get your movie posters. They have been for years. They've been super great to work with. David's been awesome. He's going to be sending us some posters that we'll be throwing up on the walls. They'll also be sponsoring our monthly, hopefully bi-weekly movie poster giveaways, so we'll keep doing those. They offer great options for original designs, framing, backlighting, canvas, even plaque designs. Coupon code Raiders15 for 15% off your order at movieposters.com. And I think it was important for Jordan to reveal eventually who the bad guy really was, which was ourselves.
Yeah. And then after we see the twist of young Red choking the real Adelaide as children, and then swapping places, there are two hints before that reveal this before we're even shown it. Is Red's voice is extremely raspy, as though she has some kind of throat problem, and the reason for that is because the tethered version choked the real version when they were children, and so her throat never healed from being choked by her. And then also the current Adelaide, she has a couple of like brain farts when talking to people, and she even says to Elizabeth Moss' character, "I can't talk," because when she came back, when the tethered version went to her parents when she was a young girl, they thought that she was just mute from the PTSD of experiencing something traumatic, and so she had to relearn how to speak. But what was happening was the tethered was actually learning how to speak for the first time. And so that's why sometimes with language she's a little behind or not quite on cue. Like when they're listening to that song in the car, when she's snapping her fingers, Adelaide is actually way off the beat. So she has this impairment because she learned how to speak at such a young age because she was born a tethered person.
Lupita actually based Red's voice on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and specifically the spasmodic dysphonia he suffers from.
I think that Lupita Nyong'o's performance in this film is one of the most physically horrifying ones I've ever seen. Just the way she carries her body, the way her face moves, and she contorts her face in these really terrifying and creepy facial expressions. I think she probably should have gotten nominated for an Oscar. I think because it's a horror movie, it's not likely to happen. But I think her performance is incredible in this movie.
Yeah, similar to Toni Collette, he should have gotten a nomination, at least for Hereditary. Lupita was definitely snubbed because this was an amazing performance, and she's basically playing, again, two different characters. Whereas the other actors, yes, they're playing two characters too, but Lupita, again, her character, Red, is the only one who can talk out of the tethered, even though she's really Adelaide, because she's really Adelaide. So she gets to add to her performance, and these tethered are very, like, animalistic, and besides Red, of course, they can't speak English or a language, so they kind of just have grunts and everything. They listen to her because she's become the leader, and they're very, like, creepy. And the same cinematographer from It Follows actually did this movie, Mike Jalukas, and he does a great job at creating terrifying images with kind of basic scenarios where the first time we see the family is they're at the top of the driveway. And this seems like it could be an easy shot to not make it look very scary, but he does a great job making it look terrifying where they're at the top of this driveway. They're backlit from like a floodlight from another house, and it's just like really unsettling, the image of it.
It's kind of more unsettling than seeing someone like Jason Voorhees. It's just a whole family is out there trying to kill you, and that's, I think, is even more terrifying.
And again, holding hands.
Yeah. And did you know that the red jumpsuits were inspired by Michael Jackson from his music video Thriller?
Oh, yeah.
And that's also why all the tethered wear one glove as a nod to Michael Jackson's famous one glove.
And there's some good foreshadowing in this film, too. For example, when Adelaide, before she gets switched in the beginning of the movie, she is walking around Santa Cruz, the beach, which is actually the location for the Lost Boys. She's walking around, and she comes across that man, the young man with the long hair, holding the biblical verse sign, which is Jeremiah 11:11. And then later on, when we cut to Adelaide growing up with her family and they meet their friends at the beach, they see a dead body on the way to the beach, and it's a little disturbing for them. And it's just this old man, and Lupita recognizes the sign he's holding. Again, it's the same old man from that she saw when she was a kid with the Jeremiah 11:11 sign. And then a little bit after that, Jason, her son, kind of does the same thing that Adelaide did as a kid, where he just goes wandering off by himself, and he sees an old man who looked just like the old man that was just dead, except he's just standing on the beach with his hands out wide. They're bloody, and he's just standing there. And you just assume he's just a crazy guy, a crazy old man, one of those homeless people that's talking about the end of the world or something like that. But we don't realize yet he's like one of the first tethered who've come up, killed his original self, which was just the dead guy, and taken his place waiting for the other tethered to come hold hands with him.
Yeah, so he's going to be the first in the chain of the hands across America. And also, if you look closely, he's wearing clothing, but underneath you can see the tips of the red sleeves of the jumpsuit and the bottom of the pants of the jumpsuit. And so, like you said, this is the beginning of the rebellion of the tethered.
And the Bible verse that continuously appears through the film, Jeremiah 11:11, which again, the 11s are mirrors too. It reads, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." And it's basically kind of a metaphor about what's about to happen.
Yeah, and also, it's not explained, but it seems to be the case that each tethered is only going to kill its own counterpart. I don't think any tethered wants to kill any other people except for it's the counterpart that it's matched with.
I think that's obvious when the tethered come in, they attack the family, and they eventually gather them all up in the living room and swarm them. You know, obviously you can say, why don't they just kill them all right there on the spot? Whereas Red kind of like lets them all go and lets each individual member of her tethered family kill each one of the above ground humans.
Also, that I got a lot of sense of the film Funny Games from that scene, where another movie we talked about previously, where a murderous pair of supposed brothers tie up a family and terrorize them. What do you think the bunny rabbits mean?
I think the bunny rabbits were the first clone experiment of the government. So I think those themselves are clones of rabbits above ground. And
that's a great point.
I think that's how the tethered survived, was because they had the rabbits to feast on, and because rabbits mate exponentially and have so many spawns that they're able to survive down there for so long.
I think that's absolutely right. I didn't think of that they would be clones of rabbits on the above ground. Peele's admitted that the reason why there are rabbits is because it's a nod to Alice in Wonderland, and also that's the reason why there's the Hall of Mirrors scene, because the sequel to Alice in Wonderland is Through the Looking Glass. And then also you could think that the red suits that the tethered wear represents the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland.
Elizabeth Moss is phenomenal in this movie as kind of like the yuppie rich friend in that family. Elizabeth Moss is a terrific actor in everything she's done. We talked about her in The Invisible Man, which was such a good horror movie. And she kills this role out and knocks it out of the park. I've never seen her as like a yuppie girl before, which is super fun. This episode of Raiders of Lost Podcast is also brought to you by Manscaped.com, the leaders of men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your comfort, obsesses over technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Grooming's a necessary part of life. It doesn't matter your gender, your sex, or whatever. This shouldn't be an ad exclusive for men. If you have a boyfriend, brothers, siblings, your father, this is a great gift for every guy in your life. I promise you, this is stuff that we actually want. It's high quality, precision, engineered tools. This stuff is legit. I can't recommend Manscaped's products more. Again, 20% off your order. Use Raiders. Again, to get 20% off and free shipping off your order, use Raiders of the Lost checkout. Again, Raiders of the Lost at checkout. And Elizabeth Moss has my favorite death scene in the movie, where she's been stabbed and she's like crawling to the phone or trying to find something for help. And she speaks to her Alexa sort of speaker, which is called Ophelia. And she asks Ophelia to call the police. But Ophelia puts on the song "Fuck the Police." It's just hysterical because there's no hope coming. There's no help.
That's great. And her tethered version of her character is terrifying and super creepy.
And then Winston Duke is awesome in this movie because he's such a cool character. And we saw him in Black Panther, but he's a very charming guy. Obviously, he's very funny, naturally comedic chops. And he's also a really big presence on camera. He's a huge dude. And so you think that at least this family would have some sort of safety because obviously he goes outside with the bat when he sees the family and tells them to get out of there. And you think, oh, don't worry, he's going to take care of him. It's Winston Duke. The guy's jacked and he's enormous. But even he's nothing compared to his tethered version, Abe, who absolutely destroys him. But he eventually outsmarts him and kills him with the boat.
Yeah, it's a great scene because it's like being stuck in the middle of the water with someone trying to kill you is like, where are you going to go?
It's like Jaws almost.
Yeah, there's nowhere to run. Jordan Peele throws in several symbols of duality in this film, but my absolute favorite is the very simple idea of the duality of scissors, a pair of scissors. A pair of scissors is made up of two parts that are mirror images of each other, and they create one pair of scissors. The scissors lie in this boundary where the handle is this very mundane and simple object, and then the other end, the tips are sharp and dangerous. So it is a perfect correlation between both the counterparts and the tethered underground.
And back a little bit on duality, I want to go back to quickly that Jeremiah 11:11 verse. If you know anything about the Bible or not, Jeremiah was a prophet who warned the Jews that God was not happy that they were worshiping false idols. So maybe that's sort of a metaphor for today's society where you can in a sense say that we're obsessed with false idols like TV, movies, smartphones. We're kind of hooked on things that really aren't beneficial to us, whether it's drugs, alcohol,
social media.
So we're obsessed with and worship people we don't know or don't provide any good to us. So maybe that's a play on modern society and how we need to do a better job at having constructive things in our lives or finding the right role models that enhance us and make us be the best people we can be.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that I think what Peele's also saying is that rather than obsessing over these false idols, try to find meaning in your own life on your own, constructively. So I think you're absolutely right by that.
And also Jason's character is interesting because he's the only one who seems to understand this connection that he has with his doppelganger, because they have that little scene where you think they're gonna the tethered's gonna kill him in that closet, but they kind of have this connection where they're playing with that light, and they both have this like obsession with fire in a sense. Obviously the tethered's a little more expansive when he lights the car on fire, but in that scene when the tethered Jason lights the car on fire to block the family's way, Jason understands finally that he can actually control his tethered and controls the tether to walk backwards into the fire and kill itself. And also, Jason, at the end of the film, obviously, the fight between Adelaide and Red, the tethered Red and the real Adelaide and the real Red, ends with the tethered fake Adelaide killing the Adelaide that's been Red for so long. And so she goes back to resuming the life of the real Adelaide, even though she's the tethered version.
So she accomplished what the tethered are actually doing.
Yeah. And Jason seems to be the only one that notices this because he like sees it in her eyes, and the fake Adelaide gives that like weird, creepy, tethered smile to him.
Jordan Peele made another fantastic original horror film with very deep social and economic and socio-political themes.
Yeah, Jordan Peele is a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to see this guy's career unfold in front of us. He's a phenomenal writer and director. Great movie, amazing acting, super unique. Love this horror movie.